Our speaker today is the Reverend Johanna Dolan. Born of her own experiences, Johanna has a clear vision and a deep passion for encouraging others to awaken to the highest versions of themselves. She has experienced the lowest places that one can reach. I remember your testimony the first day you came here, talking about rising up from the muck and the mire. I've never forgotten it. She's managed to climb back up to heights that she never dreamed possible, albeit with a few human stumbles, right? And it's the stumbles that make her a great teacher.
That's right.
Being human is not being perfect. Is striving to be your best self. Johanna has dedicated her life to helping people discover and put into action the tools and principles and strategies that raise people up from lives of mediocrity and failure to living lives beyond their wildest dreams. Johanna's training is based in new thought / ancient wisdom. Thank you for that. Because ain't nothing new. These philosophies are as old as human thought themselves. Ernest Holmes has taken the best of the best and synthesized it into a philosophy that we can apply in our daily lives. Her training is based in new thought / ancient wisdom philosophies and strategic intervention strategies. She is an avid student of metaphysics, a graduate of the Inner Visions Institute for Spiritual Development, and the University of Metaphysics. She's currently seeking her doctorate in metaphysical psychology and attends the Robbins Madonnas Training Program. After we have our inspirational reading, the next voice you hear will be that of Reverend Johanna Dolan. Ladies and gentlemen, please see the road.
You got a dip when you say that. Good morning.
Good morning.
This reading is taken from the Message Bible, and it's entitled The Life of Freedom. And it's Galatians 5. It's just a few verses from Galatians. Christ has set us free to live a free life. So take your stand. Never again let anyone put a harness of slavery on you. Never again. I suspect you would never intend this. This is verse 4 through 6. I suspect you would never intend this, but this is what happens. When you attempt to live by your own religious plans and projects, you cut off from Christ. You fall out of grace. Meanwhile, we expectantly wait for a satisfying relationship with the Spirit. For in Christ, neither our most conscientious religion nor disregard of religion amounts to anything. What matters is something far more interior, faith expressed in love. Verse 13, it is absolutely clear that God has called you to a free life. Just make sure that you don't use this freedom as an excuse to do whatever you want to do and destroy your freedom. That would be silly, wouldn't it? Rather, use your freedom to serve one another in love. That's how freedom grows. For everything we know about God's word is summed up in a single sentence. Love others as you love yourself. That's an act of true freedom. If you bite and ravage each other, watch out. In no time at all, you will be annihilating each other. And where will your precious freedom be then? Verse 18, my counsel is this. Live freely, animated and motivated by God's Spirit. I like that. Animated and motivated. You can, you can be animated. Then you won't feed the compulsions of selfishness. For there is a root of sinful self-interest in all of us, and it's at odds with the free spirit. Just as the free spirit is incompatible with selfishness. These two ways of life are and I can't pronounce this word, antithetical? Antithetical. Okay, thank you. So that you cannot live at times one way and at times another way according to how you feel on any given day. Why don't you choose to be led by the Spirit and so escape the erratic compulsions of a law-dominated existence? And that's the question.
That's right.
Verse 22. But what happens when you live God's way? What happens?
It works.
It works. He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We love that. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in your heart, and a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. Those are the gifts. Verse 26, since this is the kind of life we have chosen, the life of the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail of our lives. That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better than the other or worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. Each of us is an original. And so it is.
Thank you.
I like that.
You were the perfect speaker.
Oh.
I told Fifi she was the perfect person to, you cannot knock down. I'm putting this right behind you.
And how's the mic height? Is it?
We know how short I am. I was going to get a box. Nothing wrong with being short, people.
That's your target for you.
That's it. That's absolutely right. So, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for being here. This is an important weekend. I don't know if you know this or not, but not only are we talking about freedom, but this is Gay Pride weekend in Baltimore. And that's great. It's a big weekend. It's a weekend that a lot of us look forward to every year for months and months. Because the cool thing about freedom is that you get to choose it, right? And you get to choose how you express yourself. And some of us get to choose more than others. And it takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of strength. And it takes a lot of, I'm going to express myself. And it takes a lot of asking. You know, asking, who am I? You know, like there was so much stuff that I had to sift through when I was given this particular topic, freedom is my choice. Because I don't think about it that way. You know, like I made a commitment a long time ago about what I wanted. And for me, it's greatness. The ability to live in my greatness is the very definition of freedom for me. And so that means that I have to understand what I am and who I am more than the labels. You know, like I'm not just a white person, you know, I'm an Indian, a Native American, and I'm an Irish person. But that gets forgotten a lot, you know, and I'm not just gay. You know, I'm my father's daughter.
That's right.
And I'm my mother's little kid. You know, and I'm the oldest of 3, you know. And then I'm the type of person that you know you're loved when you're in my presence. But it took a long time for me to uncover that, you know, because violence was my answer. And, you know, I can talk for a long time about what it used to be like and what it used to be like and what it used to be like. You know, because I'm good at that. You know, I'm a storyteller. I love that stuff. But I was charged with bringing you a message today. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring you the message that has been given to me over and over and over again. It has nothing to do with my sexual orientation or my gender or the color of my skin or the religion I practice or the religion I don't practice or what I've done and what I haven't done. I'm going to give you the message because that's what I've been charged to do. And that's what I love to do more than anything. You know, and if you had told me when I first came out of the closet, because I'm gay, by the way. If you had told me when I first came out of the closet at 19 years old that I would get my family back and I would have a decent job, not just a decent job, but a job I love. And I'd be surrounded by people who love me, who I love. You know, if you had told me those things at 19, I wouldn't have believed you. I didn't believe you because that was not my experience. You know, my experience was violent. You know, and it was hurtful. And it didn't matter what other people did. It mattered what I did. You know? And that's what I had to get to. That's what I had to get to. So I got some questions for you. Do you enjoy your freedom?
Yes.
Do you read books that you enjoy?
Yes.
Do you eat food that you enjoy?
Yes.
Do you spend your life with people of your choosing?
Yes.
Do you live your life out loud and in the open? Yes, yes, yes. However you spend your life, however you spend your freedom, however you will spend this Pride weekend, hopefully you think about the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans.
Yes.
And while America isn't perfect, we've been blessed with freedoms enjoyed by few others in the world.
Yes, indeed.
That's right, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And although we don't always live up to our ideals, the freedoms that we enjoy have been immortalized in the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going to read this straight off here, don't miss a beat. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That pursuit is an important word. It's taken a long time for these rights to be extended beyond white males, to include all people of color, to include women, and now more and more to include people who are just like me, who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. And while we've moved closer to fulfilling the country's promise of freedom, we've not yet delivered on it, as we all know. Everybody in this room knows it. No matter how you come at it, you know it. And sticking with the theme for today, which is both freedom is my choice and gay pride, it behooves me to tell you I am humbled and I am overwhelmed by the public support that marriage equality has gotten, and by how welcoming this community is. You know, because until I got here, 12-step recovery was the only place that I felt welcome to let my hair down. And I know it's not a lot, but it is something. So while marriage equality is a huge step forward, we got to go farther. Because in 31 states in this country, a person who is gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender can marry the love of their life in the morning and be evicted, lose their job, face violence, and sometimes murderous violence, and a whole host of other discriminations that are unthinkable to most of us. Yet people like me live with the constant reminder that it is a possibility. And while gays and lesbians themselves receive much, much kinder treatment today, our transgender population does not. And here's an important thing to know, is that transgender people have always been with us just as much as gay and lesbian people have always been with us. And while the gay and lesbian community has been coming out more and more, our transgender population is just starting to make itself known again. And I say again because until the massacre of the Native American people in our country was completed, transgender people had this status. They were revered as people who brought not only significant contributions to their communities, but also people who brought significant contributions to their spiritual communities. If it wasn't for these people, we would not know ancient wisdom the way that we do. Our tribal peoples honored them, just as we should, and we're starting to. And I need you to know that our transgender community is right this minute the most targeted group of individuals in this entire country. They are murdered on a number and a scale that is unprecedented, except for the time during the civil rights movement in the 60s. Simply for being themselves. Simply for being authentic, empowering themselves, choosing freedom, and choosing love. Because I gotta tell you, when you are out, you are choosing love. The reason I had Galatians read is because it says, and this may seem a little off topic, but it's not. The person who accepts the ways of circumcision, now circumcision is when they cut your foreskin, and during the early Christian time periods, it was something they were trying to get people to do, like you must do this or you're not a Christian. But I've read about Christ and I've read about the Buddha, and I gotta tell you, Christ says, as I am, you are. So I am Johanna Christ, and each one of you are Christ as well. There's nothing particularly special about him except he kept getting closer. He said 3 things. Follow me, not hang off a cross, not I'm taking all your sins by hanging on the cross, and I don't mean to belittle anybody when I say that. But he said, follow me, do what I do. Live this path, live this life. He said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as you love yourself. This note right here about circumcision, basically he's saying, we ain't about the dogma, people.
Right.
And there's nothing loving about a teenager or a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, because people died in their late 30s then. You know, if you're older than that, thank God you're alive. You know, people died in their late 30s then. So to cut your foreskin was a horrible, horrible endeavor. There was nothing loving about that. Now Paul knows, because he's first and foremost a Roman, and he's also a Jew. So he had his foreskin cut at 8 days old. Right? So he's telling people, love yourself so you can love others. And that's what I gotta say about this whole transgender violence thing. Like, it is a tremendous act of courage. It is a tremendous act of love to allow yourself to walk that path. Just as it is for gays and lesbians and bisexual people. And how much can they teach us about loving others and loving themselves? But I digress.
You don't.
Thank you. Because the reality is we must go further.
Have to.
It is not enough. And as wonderful as our country's promise of freedom is, there's something far greater than that. There's a source of freedom far greater than our nation and our nation's promises. The Declaration hints at this by suggesting that these freedoms that we enjoy have been given to us by the Creator. But it doesn't define the Creator, because that's our job. It is my job. It is your job. It is our job to define who the Creator is. And we do that by developing a personal relationship with this always expanding and ever expressing power greater than ourselves. Through our Creator, however we view it, or him, or her, and however we worship it. Whether we worship it through Christianity, or Buddhism, or Judaism, or Hinduism, in all its many forms. Whatever tradition we use, each one of those traditions and the knowledge and the relationship with the God of our understanding sets us free from this law of error and this law of failure. You know, the whole hanging on the cross. It sets us free from slavery. It sets us free from dogmatism. It was never okay. It was never, ever, ever okay for anybody, for any reason, to tell you that you are not worthy of God's love.
Yeah, that's right.
It was never okay. And I'm here to tell you that you are worthy. All the time, in all ways, in all places, no matter what lie you've been told. And you have a specific job to do. And as Paul said to the Galatians, I love this letter writer Paul. He said, Christ has set us free to live a free life, so take your stand. Never again let anyone put a harness of slavery upon you. And I gotta tell you, I love this tradition. I love what Ernest Holmes and all of these other teachers have done for us. They largely reject and make it possible for us to reject dogmatism because it's too rigid and it keeps people from truly experiencing the God revealed in the scriptures of many traditions. And so we encourage people to explore various sacred texts, develop personal relationships with God, and interpret the meanings of those revelations for themselves. Indeed, we trust all people with matters of their faith. And it's this principle of religious freedom, that is one of the reasons why I have an ever-evolving relationship with a power greater than myself. The odds were stacked against me. The words, the things that I was hearing were stacked against me. But those were the things that brought me closer to God. Those are the things that brought me closer to you. Because I know what it's like to have someone throw a bottle at you because they don't like you. I know what it's like to have a group of people come at you and have no defense other than what's here. And I have discovered that the less violent I become, the more this is enough. But had I not had the freedom of religion, I never would have understood that this is enough. I never would have taken the hard steps to understand. I wouldn't come into places where I'm one of the few. Because it would have been easy for me to go to places where I'm one of the many. But this is a place where I feel loved. And a lot of people do too. So, I think you should know that I cherish this freedom. It's a blessing. And it's not even in disguise. It's in writing. And we've inherited this freedom not only from our national ethos, but from spirit. And so, on this Pride weekend, celebrating the birth of a level of freedom, another level of freedom for the LGBT community, I'd like us to take the next spiritual step and live out the threefold freedom that the Creator has offered us as a gift. And Araka, whether she knew it or not, she was guided this morning. But I suspect she knows it. Because some of the same stuff that she was telling you in the quotes, I'm going to be telling you from my notes. So the first part of our freedom is that freedom is a spiritual gift. It's a spiritual gift. And like Thomas Jefferson, while he talked about inalienable rights that come from God, in making this statement, he suggested that God created us to be equals. You take my clothes off, you take my skin off, you take your clothes off, and your skin off. There is nothing that differentiates us. Nothing that differentiates us. If I get naked and the Queen of England gets naked and we get our skin off, there is nothing that differentiates us. There's no such thing as royal blood. There's no such thing as noble blood. There's just human blood. That's it, human blood. And guess what? Everyone shares it with us. And so while Jefferson spoke of political freedoms, Paul speaks of spiritual freedom. Governments can take away my political freedoms. They can choose never to give me the human rights and the civil rights that others have. But it doesn't mean that they take away my spiritual freedom. So basically what that means is you can put me as a slave or you can put me in prison, but you cannot take away the freedom of my spirit that God has given to me. And I cannot take it from you, no matter how ugly I behave. Our freedom, Paul tells us in this letter of Galatians, is rooted in a faith expressed in love. Because it's rooted in God's love and justice, all things come around. No political system can give it to us, nor take it away from us. We've been blessed in this country with the freedom to worship openly. And more every day, we're being blessed with the freedom to live openly. And some of us know what that's like. And you can show us what it's like more and more, because we're going to need some help. And you got to remember too that when Paul wrote this letter, he was living under Roman rule. And Roman imperial rule was anything but democratic. Okay? That means that you can live in China or Saudi Arabia or North Korea and still be free. You may not have political freedom like we have here in the US, but since true freedom is a spiritual thing, nobody can take it from us. And I gotta tell you, the strongest place that we have evidence of this is the Jewish people and the Judaic faith coming out of the wake of the Holocaust. Those are some people with some faith. And it didn't get taken from them, but everything else did. Number 2 is that freedom requires responsibility. We may be free, but it doesn't mean that there are no constraints on our freedom.
That's right.
That's right. As Mark Twain puts it, I'm going to read this. It is by the goodness of God that in our country we have 3 unspeakably precious things: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the prudence to never practice either of them.
Read that.
You want me to read it again? All right. It is by the goodness of God that in our country we have 3 unspeakably precious things: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the prudence never to practice either of them. So basically what he's telling you is, you may have freedom of speech, but if you go into a movie theater and you yell, "Fire!" God help you. Right? Requires responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
And while we're free in spirit, it doesn't mean that we're free to do whatever we please. We may not live under systems of do's and don'ts, because we don't. But there is one very important limit to our freedom, and that limit is the command to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You may be free, Paul says, but don't destroy your freedom by using it for selfish purposes. The secret to living is giving. It's how we grow, and how we contribute, and how we maintain our freedom. And I got one last one, because this is the last one, and it's a biggie. Spiritual freedom leads to community. So you've been set free in the spirit, but as Paul makes it clear in this letter, and we make it clear in our own communities, we don't confuse, and we should not confuse freedom with autonomy. As spiritually fit people, we're called to experience and live out freedom in our communities. So if you're hurting and you're in community and you're spiritually fit, you know to reach out and ask for help. And if you're hurting, it is my job, my responsibility, my privilege
Yes.
to do the same thing for you. Because if we, as Katniss would say, if we burn, we all burn. So we can swim by helping each other swim. This whole keeping it inside and distancing ourselves, that's not freedom. Don't confuse freedom with isolation and autonomy. And I know that we're close on time, so I'd like to close this by inviting you all to live out this threefold freedom that the Creator has given us all. Freedom is so much more than simply getting your way. Just as spirituality is so much more than coming into this building every week and keeping the rules. Because I got to tell you, you will not be remembered for the rules that you kept. You will be remembered for the amount of love that you gave. And freedom and spirituality is how you treat people unlike yourself. Whether they are black or white, gay or straight, male or female, Jewish or Muslim or Christian or an atheist. At the end of the day, you won't be remembered for the rules that you kept. You'll be remembered for how you made other people feel. And by keeping this in mind, not only do we become freer every day, but our nation becomes freer. And we become a place that we can be proud of. And maybe in my lifetime, Because I got to tell you, marriage equality was not something I ever dreamt of. Being out was not something I ever dreamt of. Having a platform to talk about God and love and how we can be God expressed was not something I ever dreamt of. Not as an out gay person. So maybe one day in my lifetime, I will get to say that America is a place where everyone gets to experience the same freedoms as everyone else. And it won't matter about your gender or the color of your skin or your economic status or your sexual orientation. I look forward to that day, whether or not I see it. My kids and my nieces and my nephews are going to see it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.